How's it going tonight, everybody? Hopefully, I've fixed these audio problems I've been having. Last few videos I uploaded, I had some kind of bullshit going on with the microphone. I've used several different ones, but I think this one is good. I'm getting pretty strong levels here when I'm just speaking at a normal, comfortable voice. So tonight I want to talk about the concept of adorers and the adored. I want to see what's at the bottom of this because I've had a couple friends in the past month go through these trials and tribulations of figuring this whole thing out. They tend to be adorers. They adore people. They fall in love. They write long letters, and these can be men or women, and they seem to run into the same issue of getting run over or used as a doormat. And I've tried to explain my views on this. Like, you don't ever want anybody to totally dominate you. And you don't ever want to totally submit to anybody. Because what if they lead you in a bad direction? I mean, common sense, right? But it doesn't wash out that way when you get love involved or romance or other people. You slip into this adoration that strips away your individuality. And it always seems to backfire. I was watching this couple talk about their masculine feminine dynamic of how the husband is very dominant and the woman is submissive to the point that she like wears a collar around the house, like type of submissive. And that's their thing, if they want to do that. But after doing it for years, she got sick of it and rebelled and wants a more or less a less degrading sort of interaction with her husband, I believe. So, what to do? You're in the midst of this adored and adorer complex, dominant submissive complex, and over long courses of time, since human beings live so much longer, how do we endure? Should we endure? Do we need to? These are questions I've been exploring on this channel for some time. The dynamic between the anima and animus, the dominant and submissive, creative and logic sides of us inside of our mind. From where I'm sitting, it seems like both men and women have to meet in the middle of these things. For the most part, men have to be a little more in touch with the emotions, and women have to be more in touch with the logic. So we can meet in the middle, dance on the razor's edge, so to speak, and move on into a brighter future. That doesn't happen because we put the job on one person to do everything in this way and the other person to do everything in that way, and this resentment builds, and then rebellion and war within the household, destruction, particularly in the West. So this is like a Western problem. I've watched videos about marriage dynamics in Asia, and it's very different. It's very, very different indeed. They seem to have a stable understanding between one another, a covenant of the men are dominant, the women are submissive. But in the West, we're all twisted up and confused. We're not really sure um, what the hell we're doing anymore. And a lot of relationships are just crashing and burning left and right. So maybe there's some answers within, you know, sticking to the dynamic, rebelling against hyper individualism itself, even like realizing we're not that great on our own, separate. We have to work together at least as small units. I get if people don't want to jump on a giant sociological bandwagon or cultural shift. I'm leery about those myself. But we do need cohesive groups of people, families, uh, groups of friends, things like this, instead of there's like a few things about this person I really don't like, so fuck them, and I don't need anybody. That kind of attitude, I see a lot, and it's not doing us any favors. I think that dovetails into the whole romantic relationship dynamic that we find ourselves in today too. The adored and the adorer. Yeah, there's this thought out there that you can't have two adorers and you can't have two people being adored. That one person has to love the other more than the other one. That one is always going to be kind of aloof, focusing on other things, while the adorer will follow them wherever they may go. They believe in them, they look up to them, they're devoted to them. And traditionally, that role of being adored has been a masculine one, and the woman is the adorer, the supportive one. And there's a misconception that the adored is some kind of narcissistic asshole. But if you understand the dynamics of the adorer's mind, they feel as if they don't have a purpose, if they don't have someone to love and look up to help them. Why are some people geared like this? Why are some people wired like that? That's a whole other discussion we can have. Could be biological, could be cultural software, could be religious beliefs. It could be a lot of things reinforcing this stuff. But what we're finding now is that a lot of women in the West want to be the adored. They're the ones that want to be worshipped. They want the attention. They want to see what you can do for them. There's a lot of, as they call it, mistresses out there wanting to, stick their heel on someone's neck. And there's a lot of different reasons for that I've covered on this channel. The ideas of feminism, where do they come from? Religious wise, where is God's wife? Where are the wives of the gods? They were there thousands of years ago. Now they're not here. Is that causing an imbalance, a rebellion, a resentment? Is there something we can do to address that? I know there's some Gnostic communities and Thelema type people that dive into that feminine aspect, but it's still really not a mainstream idea. It's still like an underground shadow of the collective unconscious, these thoughts and feelings on this subject. But I feel like there's some answers there. This idea of the philosopher's stone, where you don't necessarily have everybody sticking to one thing, the adorer and the adored. Like Nietzsche said, like, we've got to craft ourselves an Ubermensch in these days and times that we've manufactured. We live in a very artificial human world that doesn't mesh with the natural one. So what do? Do you go back? You return to monkey? You touch grass? Then people are going to want to build spaceships and AI again. Like, how do you? Is there a way that you can move forward while you still bring the past with you? Or do we have to change altogether? Do we have to adapt in a new way? Is there a new cultural software that we have to code ourselves? Is that what the Ubermensch is? Is that what Nietzsche is talking about? It's kind of like we're on top of this mesa, and people have these ideas and concepts that they want to try out, but it goes off the edge of the mesa, this rock table that we find ourselves on all of humanity. And we go off the edge and then we fall off into the mist and drag people down with us with ideas like communism or perhaps transhumanism, like becoming cyborgs and changing these other dynamics of masculine and femininity and dominant and submissive dynamics in the home. Is that an example of falling off, or are we still on the mesa? I don't know. I think that's a really interesting metaphor and tool to use because, why did Rome fall? I think it fell off the mesa. I think it went a little too far in one direction or the other and collapsed. Like, that's what I mean. Like, if something falls off the edge, it's a collapse of civilization. So what do we do to put like guardrails around the mesa? How do we prevent ourselves from falling into the abyss and dragging countless numbers of people down there with us on these social experiments, these new ideas, these cultural shifts? Like Isaac Asimov had this wonderful book series called Foundation. Um, Apple TV has done, I think, 2, 3 seasons of this show. It's different, but it's really good because it talks about how do we soften the fall of civilization. Like, if we have a galactic civilization, like in the book, and there's trillions of people, and we can see and predict with all of our knowledge and computer models that it's going to fall and collapse, wouldn't you want to do something about it? And I feel like that is on the top of everybody's mind right now. Like, this collapse is coming. We're going to have cannibals and people living in fallout shelters and mutants and AI rebellions and Terminator shit and the Matrix, and the apocalypse is just inundated in our subconscious at this point. So to me, the natural question is, what do you do about it? Like, I don't want to live in fallout. I don't want to fucking live in the end of the world. So how do you save it? What do you do? Are there any answers in the past that can help us bridge a gap across this abyss into the future? I think there is. I think there really is a way to do it. But it's not going to be easy because a lot of people do naturally want to cling on to just the straight up tradition. But that only works in the context of the ancient times where we didn't know what we know now. Like we know so much. And to do that asks people to forget about it. And we can't. Like we've tried. We can't forget about it. I just don't think we need to do really crazy stuff. Like that Neuralink stuff freaks me the fuck out. And growing babies in fish tanks, in like breeding chambers and test tubes, that idea is being thrown around. And I covered that in my video called The Scorn of Transcendence. This insatiable desire that human beings have to transcend the flesh, to somehow make our consciousness a form of energy and escape the flesh, I think is a really bad idea. I think it's very important to understand the instincts that we have and shape technology around that. I don't think we need to, like ham fist ourselves into the wires and technology. I don't know why that is the solution that everybody's obsessed with. Like we've been trying these transhuman techniques. We've been trying to reprogram ourselves, and it causes mass depression and suicide and a population collapse. Like there's something about our souls that can't tolerate the West, and our solution is to change our biology. To give ourselves all these different drugs, or hormone replacement therapies, or installing computer chips in our head and hooking ourselves up to the internet instead of connecting with people in our communities, with our neighbors. That seems easier, right? But for some reason it feels like making a trip to the moon to talk to your neighbor or get involved in your community. We'd really rather create like the Terminator or some strange test tube human that can live in this brave new world that we've created. And you think about like who owns the test tube technology. So these are going to be like corporate babies, like armies of people made to work in a corporation. Like they're not going to have a mother and a father. They're going to be made by a company, a lab from a company. I mean, I'm sure there's going to be people that have one in their house. Are we even going to have couples anymore? Maybe it's just going to be single parents growing a child in their bedroom, like feeding it these nutrient tubes, and once it's ready, you pop it out. And I mean, that's just a thought. Like it could be a lot stranger than that. but that's strange enough. It's disturbing. It's connected to nothing. It's a vehicle of consciousness connected to nothing. Tailored for what? I made a video last week called Building Better Men, and this is in line with that. Like, build a better man to what end? Like, what's the goal? Building them better for what? It seems to build them better for the future that we've made, the brave new world, to where they don't get depressed, to where they don't want to kill themselves, to where they're the best slaves that have ever been produced, to produce things for the werewolves, you know, the psychos, the people in charge, because they've already won the game of werewolf. Like, they've got everybody to point fingers at each other instead of really get to the bottom of who's behind all the fuckery. So the next step would be, to breed people that are not human anymore, that don't have these dynamics, that don't get confused by the adorer and the adored, that have a whole other set of emotions. Maybe they don't have emotions. Maybe they don't want to be close to anybody because they don't have a mother and a father. You're just not a person anymore. They might even spit you out without a mouth where you can't even talk. Like, there's no telling what can be done with this CRISPR technology or growing people. But I want to get back down to the brass tacks, the root of our problems, and see if we can still solve them as people, and not interject this human bending technology that destroys our soul. I really don't know why we try and twist our humanity around the objects that we create. I get that there's like simplicity in making things in like a grid pattern, but it doesn't really do anything for the soul, this brutalist architecture, these 90-degree angles. There's this guy in Mexico, this architect, can't remember his name, but he makes organic architecture, like smooth, curved walls. He makes like a wireframe, and then he sprays this stuff called ferrocrete. Creates like these tunnels and these rooms that look like organs, all this nice ambient indirect lighting. He has these solar tunnels, these solar tubes that collect light, shoot it throughout the house at different angles. It's beautiful. It's technology and architecture that works around the human body and mind. Looks like a hobbit hole, like, because the house is kind of underground where it stays a constant 60 degrees. So you really just got to heat it in the wintertime. But it's beautiful. I love that. Why don't we see more architecture like that? Why don't we see more things that we can adore, that's worth adoring? It's beautiful to look at. like like those great Gothic cathedrals in Europe. My personal favorite is the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona. The pillars that hold up the vaults of the ceiling in the church look like trees. There's all this beautiful stained glass windows lined throughout the entire structure, so at any point in the day, you have these shadows of trees cascading across the rainbow colored light on the floors and the walls. It's an awe inspiring building made by Anton Gaudi. He's got other structures in Barcelona like that too. This kind of organic, flowing architecture that looks like it was grown. What would that do for our minds? If we lived in architecture that we grew, like what if there was some kind of way that you could grow mushrooms and they would turn into coral? Like what if you like just poured milk in the ground and you could like make a mushroom slash coral house that you lived in? That'd be pretty cool. I know that sounds fantastic, but we're talking about growing human beings in pods and neurolinking ourselves to the internet. Like I'm not excited about that, but I would be excited about mushroom houses that grow if you pour milk in the ground. Like that would be fucking cool. That would be an amazing human achievement. Like figure out how to solve um, shelter easily, like grow houses, figure out some way to make like bioluminescent bacteria flow through the structure where you could just like feed it sugar or candy or trash. Like what if you could just feed this vat of goo trash that it would eat and then it would glow and light up our cities at night? Stuff like that would be beautiful and inspiring and help our mood and probably make us a lot more productive towards not building better men, but building a better world, building a better structure for us to live in, to be in relation with. Like we already have like bioreactors. That's what sewage plants use. Like they turn, you know, all that crap into clean water again using like this bioreactant process. And we can make all kinds of other stuff that way too, like ethanol and fuels and different chemicals. But what if you could like scale that down, like have homemade bioreactors in your basement where we're actively turning trash into energy instead of landfills? Just, something that makes sense, that's not too difficult to do, um, that makes people's homes more affordable, um, the longevity of a home and the ability to power it more self-reliant and independent. There's this guy years ago, he had this thing called the Open Ecology Project, where he designed a bunch of farm equipment and manufacturing equipment that people could make out of like angle iron and go-kart motors. And yes, he had this idea of a power block where you could just like lift the engine out. It's like a power block, power cube, and then stick it in another machine. That way you don't need a motor for every machine. Depending on how many people that you have working that day, you could just use a power cube. Great idea. Wonderful plan. He's still trying to do it, but it's been like 10 years and it never got off the ground and went anywhere. or maybe work like that just takes a really long time. But he has these little workshops he does every year. I might need to go to one. Be kind of cool to just be around other people thinking like that in that same gear. But it's a shame how it's not like a widely adopted thing where it'd be popular for people to have smaller scale farms where they could provide for themselves and subsidize the economy locally, like sell things in grocery stores. That'd be really cool. So not everybody can farm or wants to farm, um, but to like open that possibility up to people that maybe are tired of their 9 to 5 grind and they want to do something a little different in tune with nature. Like, how do we create technology that makes that easier for us, where it's not like I mean, like a welfare sentence if you go off and do something different, where you're just going to have the government support you. How can you be truly self-sustaining and self-reliant and also help the community out? Technologies like that. And I know I started this video off talking about like relationship dynamics, but when I start to really think about it and the world that we live in, and then the world that other people live in that have more successful relationships, I'm just thinking about their structures they live in and what they do day to day. They're outside more. They're more connected to nature in Asia. Maybe that's a part of it. Maybe I'm grasping for straws or something too, but it feels like this world we're in kind of makes us sick, like psychologically sick, and the things that are expected of us. I don't know a lot of people that are proud of their job. And I've watched these like Asian YouTubers, and they have so much pride about their job and what they do. Even if they're just like a food vendor on the side of the street, they have a lot of pride about what they do and of their homes, and their relationships seem so bright and energetic. Maybe it has a lot to do with the world that they inhabit and the world they live in that supports a human culture instead of a digitized culture. Yeah, you think about it, like when people get married and they go on a honeymoon, what do? They go somewhere far off that's beautiful and aesthetically pleasing. They don't want to stick around where they live. So what if you like made a place that people loved? Like what if you could make your hometown so beautiful you like wouldn't want to take off for a honeymoon somewhere? Is that a weird thought? I don't know. Maybe people have always went off on a honeymoon, like even like Romans and Greeks or Egyptians. They're like, why would, or would they be like, no, why would we want to leave? These pyramids are the most beautiful thing ever. Let's just go have dinner by the Nile. Uh, it's kind of a strange thing. You go on a honeymoon somewhere real far away, make these great memories, but then you can never revisit those places. Like it's in Cancun or Paris or wherever the fuck people go nowadays. Somewhere far away. What if you could create all those memories locally to where when you drive by somewhere, you're like, ooh, that's where we did our honeymoon that one time. Had a good time. That's a good night. The adorer and the adored. Yeah, I should hammer on that topic a little more. I kind of went off the rails. Still getting used to this. Sometimes I have notes, but I just flip this thing on, wanting to test the audio out and see what's going on with all that. Yeah, there's a whole lot I could say on this subject, but the main thing is that I'd want to say to people is if you're not getting what you're wanting out of a relationship, negotiate, talk about it. If that person doesn't seem in a negotiable mood, you got to move on. You got to be able to talk things out and meet in the middle and really figure things out. But people seem to want to engage in this game of drama between the adored and the adorer. And maybe that's what human beings have to do. Maybe that's a part of ourselves that we can't so easily throw away. But I know it causes a lot of bullshit and a lot of pain and a lot of heartbreak with people. People always looking for something. But I do think that we can build those things within ourselves. I don't think we need like a Neuralink to reprogram ourselves. I think we can program ourselves in ways that are conducive to a bright future for humanity. And I don't think it involves a bunch of drugs and strange ideas. It might involve embodiment in certain rituals that we can craft or rediscover. I mean, not the crazy dangerous ones, but just ones that make sense, like Native Americans went on a spirit walk. I've done something like that myself. I've known other people that do something like that. You kind of go find yourself. You figure your shit out. It's like a meditation. I think stuff like that is very handy. Um, I saw this woman make a video about shadow work. Um, a lot of people just say, do your shadow work, get your shit together. But what does that mean? That means giving these dark, resentful parts of yourself a job to where you fully embody yourself, where you don't have these little corners of resentment and turn yourself into like a Joker character or a villain, getting this villain arc. Um, you want to, have that werewolf within yourself that obeys you, that helps you out, helps your ego out. A lot of people think ego is a dirty word, but your ego is your defense mechanism. Your ego is your name. It is who you are. It's in the center between the id and the superego, the angels and the demons. You've seen it in the old cartoons. You have like an angel and a demon on your shoulder. That's your id and your superego. And you're in the middle trying to decide. And it's important to stay in the middle. You don't want to go to one side or the other. You go to, the demon side, then the id, then you're always dominating. You go to the angel side, then you're always submitting. I think it's important to know how to switch between the two. And I think people achieve that, through maturity. Like you see a grandfather, maybe in his youth he was, a very explosive, angry, dominating person, but as he aged and had kids and then grandkids, and he's softened, he's become a sweeter person. Is there a way to do that sooner, to where you're still respected, you don't take shit, but you're not an asshole? It's a conversation worth having. Yeah. Well, next time I'm going to need to get some notes to keep myself on the rails. But I hope the audio has been lined out and it's a lot better. So I'll be back with